So let's compare the USA to China. Today we'll be comparing these nations in 7 categories, including basic information, geography, populations, economies, qualities of life, the military, and other random crap. To start us off, the United States is a country located in North America and was founded on July 4th, 1776. Its head of state is currently President Joe Biden, who is a member of the Democratic Party. Modern-day China, on the other hand, is located in Eastern Asia and was founded on October 1st, 1949. Its head of state is President Xi Jinping, who is a member of the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, China is one of only 5 remaining communist countries in the modern world. The United States is famous for landmarks including the Golden Gate Bridge, the Capitol, and the Statue of Liberty. China also hosts famous landmarks including the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City, where you can find lots of old rock people. The national animal of the United States is the bald eagle, with a population of over 316,000 in the contiguous states today, which is up from just 400 breeding pairs in the 1960s. China's national animal is the giant panda, whose population is sadly endangered, with there just being around 1,800 wild giant pandas today. China is divided into 34 subdivisions, including provinces, special administrative regions, autonomous regions, and some say that thing? Oh my God! China is a very large and consequently geographically diverse nation with dry deserts, a tropical island, some snowy mountains, and a cool forest whose name I will not even try to pronounce. The largest river in China, the Yangtze, runs 3,915 miles or 6,300 kilometers and flows through some of China's largest cities, including Chongqing, Wuhan, Nanjing, and to the north of Shanghai. The United States is divided up into 50 states and 14 not very often thought of territories. It too is a very large nation and is often thought of as one of the most geographically diverse countries, if not the most geographically diverse country in the world. It has multiple deserts, including the Mojave, Sonoran, and Chihuahuan deserts, the tropical climates of Florida and Hawaii, the Arctic climate of Alaska, the huge Rocky Mountain range, the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, and the Great Plains, whose public opinion can basically be summed up by this picture. The US is also importantly home to the Great Lakes system, which it shares with Canada, and it accounts for 21% of the world's freshwater supply. The longest river in the United States, the Missouri River, runs 2,341 miles or 3,768 kilometers and flows from the Rocky Mountains in Montana through much of the Great Plains and connects to the Mississippi River just north of the city of St. Louis. China and the United States are the 3rd and 4th largest countries in the world, depending on who you ask. But either way, both are close to around 3.7 million square miles in area, or about 9.5 million square kilometers. The United States is home to about 1/3 of a billion people and has an annual population growth rate of 0.57%. China is home to over 1.4 billion people, but has a smaller growth rate at 0.29%. China has so many people that it would take over 4 USAs put together to equal its population, and as such, it is the most populous country in the entire world, with the USA being in 3rd place. However, it is likely in the coming years that India will overtake China's 1st place position, as India's population is growing considerably faster than China's is. In the US, 49.5% of the population is male and 50.5% of the population is female. In China, the gender split is a little more uneven, with 51.3% of the population being male and 48.7% being female. The United States has a population density of about 94 people per square mile, or about 36 people per square kilometer. China is much more densely populated, with around 397 people per square mile, or about 153 people per square kilometer. The 10 largest cities in the United States are San Jose, Dallas, San Diego, San Antonio, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York. China's 10 largest cities are Xi'an, Wuhan, Nanjing, Chengdu, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Tianjin, Chongqing, Beijing, and Shanghai. An absolute mouthful if you ask me. In China, 71.5% of the population speak Mandarin, 8.5% of the population speaks Wu, 5% speak Cantonese, and 15% speak something else. In addition to this, 52.2% of the population are atheists, 21.9% of the population follow folk religions, 18.2% are Buddhists, and 7.7% practice something else. In the United States, 78.2% of the population speaks English, 13.4% of the population speaks Spanish, 1.1% of the population speaks some form of Chinese, and 7.3% speak something else. The US is actually the 5th largest Spanish-speaking country in the world, sitting just behind the nation of Spain itself. As for religion, 69% of Americans are Christians, 24% are atheist, agnostic, or unaffiliated, and 7% are something else. The currency of the United States is the US dollar, and China's currency is the Chinese yuan. For comparison, 1 US dollar is equal to about 6 won 70, and 1 Chinese yuan is equal to about 15 cents. China's GDP of $19.91 trillion trails right behind the United States' GDP of over $25 trillion. This makes the United States and China the world's largest and 2nd largest economies. The United States, with a 1.9% annual GDP growth rate, is growing at less than half the pace of China, whose GDP is growing at a staggering 4.37% each year. And because of this, China is expected to take the United States' 1st position in the coming years. Now, while the US population only accounts for around 4.2% of the global population, its GDP accounts for about 27% of the global economy. China's population accounts for 18.3% of the global population, while its GDP accounts for about 21.2% of the global economy. The GDP per capita of the United States is over $76,000, making it similar to places like Denmark, Iceland, and Singapore. The Chinese GDP per capita of over $14,000 makes it comparable to places like Chile, the Maldives, and Romania. The US is home to major companies including Apple, Walmart, ExxonMobil, Amazon, Pfizer, Ford, Google, and Microsoft. China is also home to some major companies including Huawei, China Construction Bank, China Mobile, the Agricultural Bank of China, Alibaba, PetroChina, Tencent, and Sinopec, most of which are at least partially or entirely owned by the Chinese government. Each year, the United States exports about $2.12 trillion worth of goods to other countries. China every year exports about $2.72 trillion worth of goods. This makes China the largest exporter in the world, with the USA in second place. China's major exporting strength is further evidenced by the fact that out of the 10 largest ports in the world, 6 of them are Chinese. China's largest exports include products like machinery and equipment, computers and other technology, furniture, plastic products, and vehicles. The main US exports include products like crude oil, refined oil, vehicles and vehicle parts, and integrated circuits. And in addition to exporting trillions in goods each year, both countries also import trillions of dollars worth of goods. The United States imports about $2.4 trillion worth of goods each year, and China imports a little over $2 trillion. This makes the United States and China the world's largest and second largest importers. In addition to this, the United States is also the world's largest oil producer, producing over 11.1 million barrels each day. China is the world's 6th largest producer, producing almost 4 million barrels per day. Each year, China produces over 1 billion metric tons of steel, which is equivalent to over 1 trillion kilograms and almost 2.3 trillion pounds of steel, meaning that China accounts for over half of the world's steel production and is unsurprisingly the world's largest steel producer. The United States produces far less each year at around 85.8 million metric tons, which is equal to around 85.8 billion kilograms and over 187 pounds, meaning that the US accounts for only around 4.4% of global steel production, and is the world's 4th largest producer of steel, sitting behind Japan but producing more than Russia. The United States has a surprisingly low unemployment rate, sitting at around 3.6%. China, by comparison, has a much higher unemployment rate at about 6.1%. The Human Development Index, or HDI, measures a nation's development by taking into account factors like education, life expectancy, and average incomes. The HDI of the United States is 0.926, which would make it the 17th most developed country in the world. China's HDI is significantly lower at 0.761, which would give it a global rank of 85. The poverty rate of the United States is 14.4%, while China claims to have a 0% poverty rate, which is probably not true. The average income in the United States is $53,490, while China's average income is $13,231. Each year, the United States spends $778 billion on its military, which is equal to about 3% of its GDP. China spends $252 billion on its military, which is equal to about 1.3% of its GDP. This obviously makes the United States the world's largest military spender and China the second largest. In fact, the US spends so much on its military that you could add up all the rest of the top 10 spenders and the US would still spend more money. The US Air Force has around 5,370 aircraft compared to the Chinese Air Force's close to 3,000 aircraft. The US Navy has a total of about 430 ships at its disposal, with 11 aircraft carriers and 74 submarines. The Chinese Navy has a total close to 335 ships with 2 aircraft carriers and 66 submarines. The US Army has about 8,000 tanks with 1.2 million active duty personnel and almost 800,000 reserve personnel. The Chinese Army has over 6,500 tanks with 2 million active duty personnel and about 500,000 reserve personnel. The US possesses around 3,750 nukes and China has about 350, but these numbers are likely outdated. Overall, the US military is ranked as the strongest in the world, with the Chinese military being the 3rd strongest. Each year, the United States sees 79.3 million tourists, while China sees 65.7 million tourists. This makes the United States and China the 3rd and 4th most visited countries in the world, sitting behind Spain with 83.7 million tourists and France with 90 million tourists. Currently, 95.5% of Americans use the internet, which is equal to around 312 million people. In China, that rate is much lower at 70.8%, or about a billion people. This means that China is the largest internet-using country in the world and the US is 3rd. So what country do you think wins overall?